Deepti Laurent is back on set to take us through what's making headlines around the world. Welcome back, Deepti. The top story today, of course, is this Australian Cardinal, George Pell, who's been charged with historical sex assault charges.
That's right. The Melbourne paper, The Age, reports that George Pell is the most senior Catholic figure in Australia, and he's, in fact, the Pope's chief financial advisor. He plays that kind of role. The 76-year-old is facing a slew of child abuse charges and, in particular, alleged mishandling of clergy abuse cases when he himself was an archbishop in Melbourne and in Sydney. Cardinal Pell, who's in the Vatican right now, has vowed that he's going to return back to Australia to, quote, get his day in court. That's, again, according to The Age. Now, The Age has also penned a pretty interesting piece looking at what they call the life and times of Cardinal Pell. The 76-year-old was born in Ballarat, which is a mining town, a kind of country town in Victoria. He was born into a religious family. The paper speaks of an Aussie bulldog, a young man who loved sports. He was destined for greatness and hoped to study medicine after he graduated from high school before he found his calling in religion. The Age also talks of his meteoric rise in the Vatican to become essentially one of the most powerful men in the Catholic Church, who, I quote, is feared, respected, and plotted against. The Age says, nonetheless, if the charges do stick, his fall would be as remarkable as his rise.
Moving on now to Hong Kong, where Xi Jinping is arriving ahead of commemorations marking 20 years since the British gave back the city.
Well, President Xi Jinping arrives this Thursday ahead of July the 1st celebrations in Hong Kong, and these commemorations have been somewhat overshadowed by prominent pro-democracy activists who were arrested after staging a sit-in, including Joshua Wong. The Guardian reports now that the city is under mass lockdown, essentially, ahead of the Chinese leader's visit. 11,000 officers have been deployed during his short visit. That's about a third of Hong Kong's police force, so you get an idea of how big the security operation is. Protesters are also planning a demonstration on Saturday as the Chinese leader leaves. During his trip, he'll visit controversial infrastructure projects, he'll inspect troops at a local garrison, and he'll swear in Hong Kong's next leader, Carrie Lam. Now, the outgoing leader of Hong Kong, who is called Chun Ying-lung, or C.Y. Lung as he's known, ends his term tomorrow. And for the South China Morning Post editors, he leaves behind him a mixed record in office. He came to power as a man of the people. He was promising to bring in sweeping changes like making housing affordable, alleviating poverty, and bringing some solutions to deal with an aging population. Well, the paper says he's made some inroads, but his policies and governance has upset some parts of society. His term has been marked by many controversies, and he leaves behind him deep divisions in social, political, and economic issues. The paper also feels that the situation right now in Hong Kong has been shaped in part by his governance and not in a good way.
All right, now moving on to the United States, where the man once called the most hated person in the country is facing trial.
That's right. You'll recognize his face there in that picture from the Chicago Tribune. His name is Martin Shkreli, infamously known as Farmer Bro, the young hedge fund manager who thought it was okay to hike AIDS drugs up by 5,000%, simply because he could. He kind of became a poster boy for Wall Street greed in the process. He also famously bought a rare copy of a Wu-Tang Clan album and then refused to release parts of it until Donald Trump was elected. So it was he's been guilty of some very bizarre behavior, but in what many might say is a case of what goes around comes around. He's on trial now for allegedly defrauding his investors in 2 hedge funds and another company that he set up. And the trial itself is proving fascinating insight into the personality itself. The Chicago Tribune reports that his trial was delayed, first of all, because they had trouble finding jurors who could stay objective. Many were saying they hated him so much that they simply could not be objective during his trial. Anyway, they finally found their jurors, and in opening statements on Wednesday, Shkreli's lawyer admitted that his client is weird, that he was mocked by his colleagues, but that he's brilliant beyond words. I quote his lawyer, as Lady Gaga would say, he was born this way. Shkreli's tactic is to sort of portray himself as a victim, not a perpetrator. Nonetheless, he faces up to 20 years in prison if found guilty.
All right, well, we'll watch that carefully as it unfolds. Finally, a group of German police officers have gotten in big trouble over some debaucherous behavior. Tell us more.
Well, they hosted the Party to End All Parties show. Now, literally, because they actually got expelled after it. A whole group, about 200 German cops have been expelled because basically they were from a Berlin unit and they were in Hamburg to help the local police deal with security operations ahead of the G20 summit next week. Well, it turns out during a policeman's ball, they took things too far, copulating in public, urinating in public, and one officer performed a striptease. It shocked their other colleagues nonetheless, and their exploits did earn them the moniker of party polizei or party police, but it's safe to say that no one is very amused by all of that.
No one thinks it's funny?
No.
It's good tabloid.
Certainly not their superiors.
Good tabloid gossip. Thank you so much, Deep D, for that press review.